And then we have the Rogers.
All right, we return with more gloves. This topic, I know there's a lot of talk about Rogers Communications and the money. Boy, oh boy, it'd be nice to get some of that chunk change, considering how much money that corporation makes. But it looks like Jose Bautista is in the same ilk as well.
Yeah.
He's wanting a five-year deal. It's reported for $150 million, $30 million per season. Yeah. Right up there with Miguel Cabrera as well as Derek Jeter territory, at least when Derek Jeter played. The reason being is his agent says he is as valuable to the Blue Jays as Derek Jeter was to the Yankees, as Cabrera is to the Detroit Tigers. You look at where Cabrera and those guys are, they're a little younger, in at least Cabrera's case, but Jose Bautista is 35, he'll be 36 in October. He's asking for big money at $30 million per season. In my opinion, a depreciating value. Colin, do you think this is a wise move for the Blue Jays? Should they do something, or maybe negotiate for something less?
I think they're probably definitely going to negotiate for something less. I think it was amazing last year. He was fun to watch, and he came up with some huge plays when we needed them. Even in that last game when they lost to Kansas City, he was playing great. And I think he's worth a lot. He might not be worth that much, but that's a bold statement to compare yourself to Derek Jeter. It's like me going around saying, "I want Mick Jagger money," because I'm a singer too. Yeah, I don't know. I love him, and I think he's great, and he's probably not going to get what he's asking for, but I hope he sticks around.
Well, it'll be interesting if they do. That means Encarnacion might be the odd man out. But if you look at what he also said in his interview, he talked about hometown discounts. That's what he took his last contract for 5 years at around $69 million. It seems odd to me for a guy to say that, considering he only had one good season prior to. Am I wrong for saying that, or was he actually right saying, you know what, I took a discount, I deserve this money now?
Well, he eventually played up to beating the money he did, and that's the problem I have. The last 2 years is when he's been the Jose Bautista we all talk about and we all want to go see and we get jerseys about.
Yeah.
He wasn't that when he first signed his contract. He was good, but he wasn't that level good. He wasn't the elite player we were always talking about today.
Right.
I don't know if you hire a 36 to 41-year-old for $30 million. Is that best for Toronto? You can do a lot with $30 million to better your team. If you look at what they've done, they lost David Price, but they have good pitching now by taking that money and putting it elsewhere. So baseball's it's a team sport, but it's a one-on-one game, and you can always find he just needs to be replaced by one guy, and that's the beauty of baseball. So I don't know for $30 million. That's the problem. He's the face of that organization as well, and do you get rid of that?
Well, what does this mean for the Blue Jays going forward? Because you talked about the pitching. They got some young pitchers that look like they'll suit fine into the lineup, Stroman being the big one. But where do they fit in the AL East now? Do they still have a good chance of winning the AL East like they did last year in 2015?
I think so, for sure. Just like what you were saying about the pitching being good, and like if they can survive with Price being gone, I think they have a really good shot. And I mean, it kind of looks like, they went to the AL East final a couple times before they even went to the World Series, like in the 80s and stuff. History has proven that the Jays have been able to get on a certain wave and then eventually get to the World Series. And that's what happened in the early 90s. And I think they have a shot, for sure.
And they were winning last year by run support, and they didn't lose very much of that, if any at all. So they have all their big bats. They'll still be putting up the massive home runs, the massive runs. That's what was winning them last year.
Even though Boston kind of retooled, if you look at the guys, picking up David Price on top of that, you still feel that the Blue Jays would be the front runners in the American League East?
I think so. It might be between the Jays and Boston,
As long as it's not the Yankees, I don't care.
All right. Well, we'll move on to a certain player. Didn't play for the Yankees, but he was a divisive figure, a controversial guy, and according to him, God knows he should be a Hall of Famer. We're talking about Barry Bonds, who last week met with the media. He's now the new hitting coach for the Miami Marlins, and he admitted basically saying, you know what, my stats speak for itself. I should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, the bad thing for him is God doesn't have a vote in the Hall of Fame. The baseball writers do, and they don't like Barry Bonds. But he did receive some great praise from Ken Griffey Jr., who was a nearly unanimous pick at this year's Hall of Fame inductees, or as part of it. And he said, you know what? I say you put him in the Hall of Fame. Is that a glowing endorsement? And do you think that maybe will turn some people's opinions of Barry Bonds?
I think it's a big endorsement from a major player. I hope it works out for him. I don't know what to think about all that stuff because so many people were taking stuff. And if you're still that great and a bunch of other guys are doing it too, then you're still that great,
My problem is that baseball has a history of doing this to players and blacklisting them. You won't let Pete Rose back into baseball in the Hall of Fame, but now we're going to let a guy who deliberately cheated in your
Allegedly.
game. Allegedly
Cheated.
Deliberately.
Big difference between alleged and deliberate.
Who cheats in your game, and you're going to let all his stats stand. His stats maybe wouldn't be that good if he allegedly wasn't juicing himself.
But I don't think the league was like, you know what, we're going to endorse gambling in Pete Rose's sense, as opposed to basically saying, you know what, guys, take as many drugs as you want because we need baseball back, which they did with the McGuire and Sosa era.
Yeah.
And when people started complaining, then they're like, all right, we're clamping down on this. I'm not going to necessarily blame the players in that case. I wouldn't necessarily agree with the whole Pete Rose scenario. But with other players that are in the Hall of Fame, I do agree with that notion that there are a lot of, you would say, bigots. There are a lot of alcoholics, a lot of guys who were just bad people in general, and that's just putting it mildly, that are in the Hall of Fame. Why not put Barry Bonds? But that's just how I see it. But I see it through a rose-colored, view frame in my glasses. So that's how I go. But all right, guys, thanks for that. We're not done with you yet, Colin. We have a great game for you coming up called Over Under. So be prepared.
Okay.
And you guys
Do
as
I
well.
need to put the gloves on?
Well, that's your opportunity. Maybe you can give a couple jabs to
All right.
Andrew here. We'll be coming back when
I
more
won't
gloves
jab.
are off. Stay tuned.